So this talk is probably best described as my morning habits. And when it comes to morning habits, when it comes to getting your day started correctly, I don't want to use the word correctly. I mean, there's so many ways to do it, but here's how I do it. That's the bottom line. And there's really four steps. There's 4 stages or 4 things that I'll emphasize in terms of those morning habits. The way and this can be applied to any time you're beginning a trading session. So even though I'm calling them my morning habits, because this is how I start off trading my day, if you trade, for example, the European and UK Open, it's the same set of 4 steps. If you trade Asia, or if you trade the US and then come back for Asia, you're going to go through these steps again. Okay, so anytime you start trading a new session or a new, you're coming back to your trading desk after, say, a few hours away, you want to go through these steps again. And they don't take very long. I mean, the last step is probably the longest, because the last step is actually the trade scanning, or what I call the triage. But before you even get to that 4th and final step, there's a few things that you have to do. So the first thing I'm looking at here is I'm going to scroll up, and here is the economic calendar. Now, I like to view the live calendar, so I'll click on that. And if you're logged in, then you can change the time zone. Now, I'm logged in here, and I actually use my Yahoo account to log in, because you can link it up to numerous accounts. I actually use my Yahoo account to log in. But what I want to do is change this GMT Universal Time, because I don't like doing GMT math. I don't want to trouble myself with that. So what I do is I go up to Eastern Time, because that's where I am in the world, and I click OK. Anytime I'm using any kind of economic calendar, one of the musts for me is what I just did. If I have to do GMT math, I'm simply not going to use that economic calendar. And because I can change it to where I am in the world, that makes life much simpler. And I have to tell you, one of the things that is part of my economic calendar scanning requirements is it must be an international calendar, obviously, since we're trading Forex. And, I like to look at a number of calendars. I won't just look at one. I might have one that's kind of a home base, but I might look at a number of calendars. There's a calendar, and I write for a lot of different sites, so I usually gravitate towards the sites that I write for and look at their calendars. It doesn't matter. The reason I like to look at a number of calendars, though, and this is, I think, fairly important, is sometimes the forecast figure will change. So I like to have a forecast range. You might have 2 or 3 different forecast numbers, and that way you can also factor in the high and low of what traders are expecting. So I might look at 2 or 3 calendars, and that's exactly what I'm showing you right here. I'll look at a number of calendars and take a look at what the releases are, what the forecasts are, and again, one of the musts is it must be able to conform to where I am in the world in terms of time frame. That's really the first step, the calendar. After that, we move on to the next. And by the way, what am I looking at for the calendar? I want to not only look at what has happened and how the market might be digesting, for example, in this case, German factory orders. Okay, another thing I want to do is look at not only today and what has happened, and obviously what is coming in terms of when I might trade. In fact, if you're going to trade this evening, the Asian session, you absolutely have to be aware of the RBA statement, especially if you're trading anything that trades against the Aussie. I also like to look at a week view, and I'll usually do this on a Sunday evening or on a Monday morning, whatever it is, but I like to look at a week view because the market is a forward-looking animal. It's a forward-looking mechanism. It's a discounting mechanism, which means I not only have to deal with what has happened and what's going to happen in the near term, say like today or within the next few hours, but I also want to look ahead and see what type of economic events are happening within the next couple of days, and preferably through the week, because again, the market's going to be looking ahead to certain events. Like, for example, today, what's the market going to be looking ahead to? We'll take a look. We have Fed Chairman Bernanke starting his testimony tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern. Those are things that the market's going to look forward to, say, today. In fact, if the market seems lethargic or kind of, and looks like it's anticipating something, like we're dealing with that tall poppy, or what I call the guillotine syndrome. Nobody wants to stick their neck out for fear of, being the first. We know that tomorrow's 10 a.m. event could be a big part of that hesitancy. All right. So again, you want to look through the week as well. I think it's a really important aspect to this. Then I'm going to segue to my next step, which is scanning the headlines. And there's a particular way I like to do that. There's a particular emphasis I have on what it is I'm looking for. So let's go ahead and jump over to that, which is scanning the headlines.